on? Hello, you guys, and welcome to the Woman's Cave. I am loving today. I've got to say it twice today.
Oh, yeah.
Interruption.
I did. I let you have it because you know what? It is Friday, and literally it's getting closer and closer to my happy hour time when it's, like, acceptable for me to start, like, my happy hour. Well, Nona, you know that
happy hour.
You know that is so empty. So
it is empty.
Let's not even go there today.
Oh, right. Well, no, we have serious people.
I know, but we're trying to act professional. We're trying to fool them. Okay?
Fooling commencing.
Fooling commencing? Okay, so can we, like, high five on that one? Social distance. Oh, I love it. I love it so much.
I don't know about it.
And I'm Jay, so that's exciting. We remember that. So another social distance high five. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Okay, and we wrote books, which are literary life guides.
With pop poetry. Whoop, we remember to say that, Ebola elbow.
Ebola elbow.
Yes. All right. So we wrote the And I Thought series. And I Thought Divorce Was Bad with Other Life Lessons. And I Thought Being Grown Up Was Easy. Both of them, well, one of them will soon be available. The second one will soon be available on Audible. And the first one is available on Audible right now.
Oh,
so
we also have Foreign Coffee, which is available on Audible.
Yeah.
The only reason I remember because we interviewed some lady who reads romantic. Okay. Anyway, moving on. We also have the Misfit Guides series. Boom.
Yeah, Misfit Guides. And then we have a
poetry book.
Poetry book, if one of our only ones, If Only I Were Me, available on Barnes & Noble only. And then you can find out everything your ladies are doing. Oh, yeah.
We are the founders of the 25 Hottest Indie Authors, Artists, and Advocates magazine. Now finish it
Yes,
up.
because, I mean, like, we have a lot of people in the cave today, so I'm trying to give them the most time. That's what I'm trying to do. To find out everything your ladies are doing on www.andwethought.com.
But y'all aren't here to hear about it.
We're here to hear from our wonderful guests with an S. So I'm super excited. Anne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Anne Bracken. I live in Columbia, Maryland, and I have rediscovered baking bread and doing a lot of sewing in addition to writing.
Oh, I have questions. We have to move on.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous.
Faye, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure. I'm Faye. I'm also a resident of Maryland. I'm an author, and I just got a new popcorn machine that I'm very excited about.
Oh, yeah. That's super exciting. I love popcorn.
Okay, patty cake high five. Yes.
Yes.
Did you get the theater oil to go with? I'm sorry. No, we should keep moving.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Keep moving. Oh.
I get confused when we have more than one person. There's blonde under here. And I can say that because there's actually blonde under here.
Yeah, I don't know why my neighbor has just decided to cut their grass, so that's exciting.
Laura, you're next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Laura Chauvin. I am a poet and an arts educator, and I just got finished copies of my new children's book in the mail today. Got a big box from my publisher, so today's a good day. It's called A Place at the Table, and I can't wait to show it off.
Oh my goodness. Are you going to bring it to show, right? You have a copy.
No, I haven't unboxed it yet, so I can make an unboxing video.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I was going to say, if you want to get on Zoom later, maybe we can, like, splice it in. Like, here you are, showing it off. We love it. So congratulations on that. Linda Joy.
Hi, I'm Linda Joy Burke, poet, writer, percussionist, picture maker. It's been a revolutionary week for me in America as well as my colleagues here. My cat may decide to join us. Those are my things. I know it's more than two, but we write, so we also talk.
Absolutely. Well, Nona is famous for her two-part questions that she says is only one question, which is hilarious.
Never mind. Anyway, so let's get to the question part because we don't really do segues well. So question part is started. So you guys do the Wilde Reading series. How did this come to be, and how long have you been around?
Anyone taking turns? Whoever?
I'll start. So at the time, I guess was it 3 years ago or 4 years ago? It's 4 years ago. At the time we started, there was no monthly reading series, regular reading series in Howard County, Maryland, where we live. So I reached out to a bunch of friends, including Anne and Linda Joy. Faye wasn't with us yet, to see if we could get started on a reading series. And one of our main ideas behind it was that we wanted to pay our featured authors, which is kind of unusual for a reading series. So we looked into getting grants. we ended up getting support from HOCO Palizzo, the Howard County Poetry and Literary Society, so that we could pay our featured authors when they come. And, and we also wanted to have an open mic portion. So that's 4 years ago, and we're still going strong. We picked up Faye along the way, who's been a great addition, and we rotate co-hosting duties. Does anybody want to add? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I want to add a couple of things. So we're in Howard County, Maryland, Columbia, Maryland. I've been here for 44, 45 years. I kind of lose track now. I came when I was 17. And so I was part of what was the vanguard at that time for coffee houses, et cetera, poetry and coffee houses. And so we had a lot of different venues that were spread out all over Columbia. But what we knew, what I found out was that people in Columbia weren't going to Baltimore and they weren't going to DC, which had thriving scenes. And those scenes were literary poetry as well as spoken word. And so I had the privilege of being in both of those communities. And I worked with the Howard County Center of African American Culture for about 10 years, and we hosted a reading through them. Monthly reading where we invited guests, including Ethelbert Miller from DC and Toy Derricott, national known poets as well as local poets. But Laura was aware of, and I'm sure Anne was aware of at the time, that there was really no venue for emerging voices. And also people didn't quite count Columbia in, even though we have the Howard County Poetry and Literary Society, which is a major society, and we have Literary Magazine, but they didn't count us in and understand that we had a welcoming audience, very welcoming audience for all kinds of writers. So that's my 33 cents worth. Anne?
I like it.
Faye?
I like it.
Or Anne?
Laura and I talked about this several years ago, and I remember one day we actually went to a bookstore in Ellicott City that's no longer there, and talked about having a reading series there. But it was something in the back of our minds for several years. And then finally 4 years ago, we really got things started and moving, and it's been such a great experience to meet writers from all over the area and get introduced to lots of new voices and to bring them to Columbia.
Yeah, I'll just add that. I was happy to be brought on board. Laura and I met through a mutual friend, and I was at the time just trying to do a lot of children's workshops and bring kids in. So I think that was the element that drew me in. But since, I've worked a lot with the adult authors, and I grew up in New York, I was a student of like the New Eurekan, and so open mics are near and dear to my heart. So I was just happy to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of really great ones in New York we follow.
Yeah.
So I just have a kind of like a personal question, I guess, for y'all. So how have you found being friends has helped you to develop this Wilde reading series? And
because you have to have challenges, and I don't know, friendship normally helps, or sometimes it hurts. So how does it help to hurt you guys?
I'll jump in.
Go for it. Go for it, Anne.
I think it helps that we're all friends because, sometimes somebody's having a hard time and maybe they're not able to host that night. And it's not a big deal for one of us to jump in at the last minute and take over hosting duties, or to bring the food if somebody else doesn't have time to go to the store. So I think, and we all have different contacts in the community, different writers that we know. So I think bringing all those aspects together has really helped us have a strong group.
I love that. So it's just help.
I want to add something which I think is unique to our community, and some of us may agree or not agree, but we all write from a heart-centered place, and the work that we have been doing in community for the past several years is from a heart-centered place. And so I think that's what kind of helps in what we're doing and how we've managed to keep the energy going, is that what we do matters, and the environments that we create for people and the people that join us, they matter. And especially, I want to just in the times that we were in the past several months, we had to switch to doing online. And we, in that domain, every reading that we've done has gotten better. And in that domain, it is still getting better, which speaks to who we are as human beings. And I think that, that's really important to bring to the table. I was thinking about, if you don't play well in the sandbox together, then you shouldn't be there, so.
I agree with what Linda, Joy, and Anne are saying. I think one important piece is, in our own separate lives, each of us is involved with community activism through literature or poetry in some way. I'm a visiting artist in the schools, which Linda Joy has done that work as well and is an active activist. Anne has done teaching in the prisons. Faye is working with kids in the community and their writing. And I think that not only that piece, not only the activism piece, but the fact that we're friends and that we like each other, when people come to the reading series, either as featured authors or as open mic participants, I think you can feel the vibe. You can feel the love that we have and the respect that we have for each other. So when it's like, think of it like the four of us make like a box. And when you walk into that box that we create, you're in that space of mutual respect. And we're 2 white women and 2 black women, and that's important as well. We're also modeling how communities can work together.
I sincerely agree. Absolutely. Faye, when you guys, Faye,
oh, no, I agree with all of that. And I think it really just brings people in, too. I mean, I feel like I've been to a lot of readings, and I feel like ours get so heartfelt. I mean, there's tears, there's lots of laughter. I mean, it's always a really beautiful thing. And no matter how tired I am, because I have 3 little boys, but it's always energizing, and it's always like just fills me up. It's a great group.
It's amazing that you find time for literary in your life.
Yeah, I know, with 3 little ones.
That's why I need it.
Jay, do you have another question?
Yes,
Can I ask mine?
Yes, I know. Right, so I have the 2 serious questions of today, so that's exciting. I get to be professional today. So as women, you're a group of women that have produced a reading series. I just wanted to know if you have one piece of advice each for women that are trying to break into literary and want to do a reading series or do more in the community. What can they do?
I would say just for me being, just for me being, but I think it's important as an artist to give back to the artist community, so I think it's difficult. I know for me, I was kind of in my mom bubble writing. I was doing a lot of TV and film reviews and things like that before I just looked up and thought I need to know other people that are doing this work and that are writing and that are, connecting through literature and things like that. And I mean, that's how I met Laura and how I started meeting a lot of people within the Howard County community. I wouldn't have done that if I had stayed in isolation, so I think volunteering, getting to know people, and coming from an authentic place, not just for your own motivation, but really to enrich and, and build, I think all of that is a great foundation for getting involved in something like this.
I would agree. I'd see who's out there. I'll never forget, and Linda Joy probably remembers too. Linda Joy was the very first poet that I met. And I moved here 20 years ago, and I was a new mom. I had a newborn baby at home and went to a reading, and Linda Joy was standing at the door. I can still picture it. And, she reached out to me. She started a conversation with me, and I remember kind of teary-eyed saying to her, "Where are all the poets?" And we've been friends ever since. So those literary friendships, for me, especially with women and women who are willing to mentor you or introduce you, bring you into the circle, is really important. And, the reading series, ours and the other ones that exist in Central Maryland, they're great places to meet other writers.
I just want to say, and Laura saying that, Laura did that for me, by the way. I remember I read it my first Wilde readings, and she got all teary-eyed. It was a great moment.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And I would just say that for all of us, literature is our way of engaging with the world. Whether we're writing novels or nonfiction or poetry, literature gives us a voice. And I think most of the writers that we invite have that viewpoint as well. They have something that they want to say, and writing is their vehicle. And when we bring people together at our readings, they're all visibly moved by the work that people share. And we always have very interesting discussions about a range of topics. So literature, to me, literature is a wonderful tool for addressing what's going on in our lives and in society at large.
Linda Joy?
I echo everybody. The thing that I learned long time ago is that you have to show up. So showing up is part of it, being authentic, as Faye said. And this thing that it's tricky because it's a generational thing, I think. Something about being humble makes a difference. That you got to leave your ego by the door sometimes, especially if you're breaking in, because if you're breaking in and you've never been in front of an audience before and you read your piece and you think it's the best thing since banana cheesecake, and people are like, banana cheesecake, huh? And you give them feedback, or it's like you have to be open to what's going to happen in that exchange of feedback. And do you want to grow your work? Are you there just because you think you're the best thing, or are you there because you want to grow your work? And most of the people that I've encountered over the years that are still poeting, the 20-somethings or 40-something now, and they've got young people that they bring in forward, and I want to also not have this distinction between literary, because literary is sort of exclusive in some communities, so that we have to, the poetry world is a huge world, and some domains don't cross, but the rules for writer, there's a writer, the 20-somethings that have run poetry slams, they're working on their craft now so that they can bring young people forward. So I think that's one of the aspects is why do you want to do this? If you want to do this to add this to your resume, you're going to resent the fact that you may not get the outcomes that you want. If you do this because you're doing it for the betterment of the audience and your artists, and you detach from the fact that maybe 5 people are in your audience one night and 25 are in the next night, those are the kind of sort of the internal conscious things that people have to think about, when they're going to decide to start something. And be willing to pass it on to the next person. You create a thing and you do it well enough, and then you can hand that ball off. And I've seen it happen in Baltimore so often, in the writing community in Baltimore. I've seen it happen all over the place. So that's my 43 cents worth.
I think one thing I wanted to add.
I love. He's always like a third of a dollar or a little bit. I love it.
Can I just add something to that? I think one thing I'm just thinking about, I went to a different reading series with a friend of mine, and I remember the host was saying, you only get one poem. So if you read a short poem, that's on you. Then you have less stage time. So you better bring your longest poem because you only get one. And I thought, wow, that's a really different vibe from us. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the differences is when we have a featured, and we weren't doing this right away. I think it's something we brought in over the years. We make time after their reading for a little bit of Q&A. Mm-hmm. So the audience can ask questions and get to know the author a little bit better. And that has helped shift the whole feel of each event into more of a conversation, and not so much like, this is my chance on the stage. And I'm only, I'm sitting in the audience the whole time, like looking at my poems, planning what I'm going to read. I'm not really listening. Mm-hmm. It's moved us away from, not that we were really about that, but moved people away from that and more to focus more on really sitting and being present and listening. And I love that about our reading series.
Absolutely.
I do like that because questions are very important. And I love the way they answer them because you kind of take notes at the end. You're like, okay, let me jot that down because that's got to happen. And that way you're not even thinking about you. You're just thinking about as...
Well, you are, but you're not.
Yeah. You're thinking as Linda Joy was saying, you're thinking about your art and your craft and to improve it. Yes. Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
And Jade says I can ask now. So
Yes.
okay.
Woo!
I have 4, but I'm going to...
No. You can have 1 2-part.
I'm going to do a 3-part question.
Okay, 1 3-part question.
Thank you. Okay. I actually wrote it down, you guys. I'm you guys being really professional for y'all.
I know, super professional.
Okay, so how has poetry touched each one of your lives? And then I know that you bring people in to Columbia. Do you ever go out to tour? And how does that work out? And my last part of the question is, can we get to hear some of these poetry that you guys have written today?
Poetry. Anybody? Anybody ready?
I mean, we are talking about Wilde Reading, so I figured, the founders might want to read something.
Sure, I'm up for it. I didn't want to be the first person to answer because I don't remember the question. So
no problem. I have no problem reading them again. So how has poetry touched your life? Do you ever go on tour and read a poem?
If you want to.
If you want.
All right, I'll start. The short version of the story was I left home at a very early age. I was institutionalized and made a person in need of supervision is what they call it in the juvenile justice system in Washington, D.C. And I started writing poetry then. I had a teacher, English teacher, who thought I was talented. Thank your English teachers. She thought I was talented. She got a college scholarship for me to Mount Vernon College, the College of President's Daughters in DC. So I got my first poetry class. I took my first mini poetry class. I think I got an A- in it. And I thought I was the you-know-what. I published 2 poems in the Washington Star-News Weekender, and I understood for me where I was and what was going on in my life as a juvenile in the juvenile justice system in Washington, D.C., on the edge of the civil rights movement. I was 12 when D.C. burned, that the only way that I could save my life was to write. The only way that I could save my life was to do these weird poems. And the weird poems became something that I was able to craft and to recognize myself as an artist. And so there's that. That's what's the change of my life. In terms of tour, I don't do that so much anymore. I was at a point in my writing career where I was working 7 days a week. I have a trade skill, run my own business, and I was doing poetry and traveling around, and that was a thing. And then I realized that I had no personal life, and I stopped doing that probably about 10 years ago. Actually, I got a dog, and the dog stopped me from doing that because I wasn't traveling as much. So that's the answer to that. And I think I'm going to read this poem. This is a dated poem. It's an old poem. It's from this collection called When Divas Laugh. And it was published through Black Classic Press in Baltimore, which is Paul Coates, which is the second oldest, if you're familiar with Black Classic. This is why I remember King. I remember King because I know there's a young man who lost his good home and his babies and his wife over some crack cocaine, and he thinks it's because some white man down south didn't treat him right. I remember King because it's no lie that Mississippi 30 years, no 40 years, no 50 years later is still the poorest state in the Union. And Haiti, a war-torn country of freed Africans, is still the poorest country in the world. I remember King as I tried to find a movie that doesn't have the picture of the description of someone killing someone else. And I understand that 30 years later, we are still more fascinated with teaching the ways of hurting each other than walking hand in hand. I remember King as I watch Geraldo's midday KKK mothers with their hooded babies saying with some warped conviction that we don't hate anyone, we just want them to stay out of our world. I remember King when I hear the testimony of one arrested campesina in El Salvador, her body raped and burned and tortured relentlessly. If they set her free, she may go back to the same poor compañera. Chances are she'll escape to the other America. I remember King when on his legal birthday, the debut of the war theater, Desert Storm, America at War, opened this free country as another president betrayed everything King stood for. I remember King when I sat in Lafayette Park with the police and the homeless people, and I wondered if Bush's bombs with 1,000 points of light he spoke of earlier in his career. I remember King when some late night talk show caller says this country is turning into an effing third world and the DJ agrees and someone else throws out more hatred. 20,000 watts of let freedom ring. 20,000 watts of I remember King when I changed the station to something black and soulful, like I've had to run home again. And I did run home again. I remember King when I look for myself in the mirror, when I look for my own power, my own passion, my own freedom. Let freedom ring. I remember King and all those who came before me to make my road easier. I understand freedom's not being free. And trusting Big Brother still only gets you a cursory pat on the head. Yet the flames still burn. 20,000 watts of let freedom ring.
Oh, I feel like we should even ask the rest of the people about the poetry in their life.
Whew,
Good gracious.
Oh, okay. Let me get my life together. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good.
My word.
It's been a week.
It has been a week. That is not how I went in that week. Thank you so much
for sharing.
That's so impactful.
Beautiful.
All right.
Joy.
Our life together, and we're gonna go back to asking questions. Winona, your 3-part question?
Yes. Who else would like to answer one of the 3 parts?
Maybe
Laura,
you'll have to ask
Faye, Anne.
You might have to.
Yeah, that was beautiful, Linda Joy. Thank you for sharing
that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, poetry and writing for me has always been about, connectedness. I grew up, like I said, in Queens, New York. Wasn't always the easiest environment to grow up in. And it wasn't always easy to make sense of a lot of things that were happening around me. But my older brother used to write rhymes because he was a student of hip hop. So he used to take me on these long subway rides around the city, and he would write rhymes in his book and I would sit there and watch him, until one day I was like, well, maybe I should try, writing too. So I started writing stories. For me, it was about escaping into different worlds and imagining different types of people. And when I look back on those things, I was definitely just trying to make sense of a lot. So, for me, it was about connectivity. It was about, processing things. It has also been a life-saving thing, even as I've grown older. When I started getting back into writing as an adult, I took a different path. I went to law school, I practiced law. But when I started writing again, I became a mommy blogger. I used to write about my kids all the time. And I had this experience, and I guess it's relevant to what's going on now with my son once. I was in the doctor's office with him, and there was another woman there with her child. And she looked at me and my son, and, you know, there was like a little bit of trepidation and curiosity about us. And she said, you see, I forget what her child's name was. There are all different types of mommies and babies in the world. And just the way she said it, I felt like I was in a zoo, you know? And he was just like all of my boys, my oldest, he just was the cutest little thing and so innocent and so sweet. And to this day, just incredibly empathetic. I mean, the way he's looking at what's happening right now is almost heartbreaking because he just has so much sympathy for people that don't always deserve it. You know, and I just started imagining what it's going to be like for him when he grows up and all my fears as a Black mother and all of those things. So a lot of what I wrote in those early days was just a pouring of love and, you know, just trying to, you know, make sense of who we were and painting us as human beings and a lot of that stuff. So, you know, again, it's just always been my way of making sense of things, and reading poetry has been my way of understanding other people, you know, and feeling like I'm not alone. Like Laura said, I think all of us are very feeling people, you know, and we have a lot of emotion in what we write, as you just heard, a lot of depth to what we write, you know, and it's always been a treat and a privilege to be able to experience that, you know, and participate in it.
Do you tour?
Not so much. I mean, now things are so virtual, you know, but I've definitely gone around and read my work in different spaces and places. I wasn't sure if you have we taken Wilde Readings on the road, which I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea, but we haven't.
Not yet.
No, not yet. Virtually so, right? That's what we're doing now.
Will you be reading today, or are you going to pass?
No, I'll pass today.
Okay. And or Laura?
I don't know if I'm going to read anything. I just don't know. I'm kind of we're moving in our house. Just long story, but I don't have all my books with me, so I don't know if I'm going to read anything. But I will say, and I'm going to say this for any kids, especially who are listening, because I find this is something that a lot of young writers connect with. I grew up in a bicultural household. So my mom is British, and she was born right at the end of World War II, where there was still rationing going on and all of that. Very much a stiff upper lip and children should be seen and not heard culture. But my dad is a Jewish guy from the Bronx, and everybody's very loud, and as soon as you think something, it's out of your mouth. And I may have spoken with Jaden Wilnona, I may have spoken with you guys about this before, but somebody said something really interesting to me once, and that was, they said that the reason that I write is it allows me to navigate the two cultures of my family. So it allows me to speak without sort of breaking the rules of not speaking too loudly or getting in people's face or being brash. So I can be those things on paper, and it's like, it's okay. Or it felt safe when I was a kid. And once I started finding that avenue for expression, that felt like a safe place, but also a brave place. And I still feel like sometimes I go back to journals that I kept when I was a teenager, and I realized I was writing down things that people were telling me later on, oh, that didn't happen, or it didn't happen that way. And writing was a way for me to record what I was observing. And especially now, connecting with what Linda Joy was saying, because of the pandemic, because of what's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality in our country right now, there are a lot of kids out there who are at home and who are being told how they should feel about it and how they should process it. And writing is a space where they can write down what they're feeling in their own circle, in their own mind, before somebody tries to tell them to think another way. So that's why writing became so important to me, and it has stayed that way throughout my life. And one of the reasons why I write for children as well as for adults.
Thank you so much. And
Laura, can I also say that you gave me like a confidence boost, I guess you could say.
What did I do?
So, like when I was to you before, I was talking about writing for children possibly, and I went ahead and pursued that. So yay, confidence boost.
Oh, tell me about it later.
Definitely. And we'll finish where we started.
Okay, so I came to writing when I had a very serious experience of depression, and nothing made sense to me as to why I was feeling that way until somebody sent me a poem by Mary Oliver, The Journey, and it talked about a wild night and the road being full of branches and stones, and you knew what you had to do because you could only save one life, and that was your own. And that poem really helped me to tap into what was going on inside. Nothing else made sense, but poetry started helping things make sense. And what I realized was that poetry could not only be a vehicle for healing, healing from depression, but it can be a vehicle for understanding all kinds of things, a vehicle for social change, a vehicle for just self-expression. And I think poetry is critical for people. It speaks to them in ways that a speech can't, or in ways that an article in a magazine can't. It touches the heart, and that's where change happens. And when people feel something, they can reflect and they can begin to change. And it also validates what's going on inside, or what your view of the world is at the time. I think that writing helps you make sense of what's happening all around you. Linda Joy showed that in her poem. Laura talked about that for herself, and Faye talked about that as well, with making sense of raising Black boys in this extremely difficult society. So I continue to use poetry that way, poetry to make sense, and poetry for all kinds of healing. And I'm going to share a poem today that I wrote recently. It's called In Need of Imagination. I wake to the call of the warbler, another morning where the flame of inspiration sputters under the intangible sense that life has been suspended. Preparing coffee feels fractious. The pulse and whir of grinding beans, the tangle of electric cords waiting for the day to begin, with toasting and blending and boiling. My country wraps itself in hubris, despite bridges collapsing routinely. Sunlight fractals on the brook. I hold a leaf in my palm, hoping for an end to the unsparing rigidity of the powerful.
Thank you so much for sharing. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate y'all coming on today. If one of you would like to tell us, you can find out more about the Wilde Reading series, and actually, individually, you can tell us where people can find out more about you. So we will start with Laura, because why not?
Okay, hi. Wilde Readings, we have a Facebook page, and you can also find us on the Hoko Palazzo website. So our Facebook page is Wilde with an E, like Oscar Wilde Readings, also for Wilde Lake, which is one of the neighborhoods in Columbia. We have our events, mostly they are the second Tuesday night of the month, September through June, when we are meeting in person there at the Columbia Arts Center in Long Reach in Columbia. And you can find me at www.laurachauvin.com, and I'll pass it along to whoever's next. Linda Joy.
So
Sorry.
Okay.
So our June reading is actually going to be on June 9th, which is a virtual reading, and the listing is on Zoom. I'm the host, and we also have a open mic, so, you should join us, bring a poem, okay? And I'm a public person, just Google me. I'm Linda Joy Burke. I have several blogs. I have 4 blogs. I am on Bird Poet on Instagram for visual art. I'm Joy Bird on Twitter for all my political views, whether you like it or not. And I'm on Tumblr and Blogger, and I believe I've built a website, but I haven't bought my domain yet, so I should do that sometime soon. Thank you for having us, by the way.
Well, thank you for coming. This is a privilege. Are you serious?
Wait, and you guys are in Maryland?
Yes. And it's Maryland. We are nothing but some poets here, so we were like, whoo, This is exciting. Hey, Faye?
I feel like we're all giving little pieces of the Wilde Readings information. So our guests on Tuesday are Kim Roberts and Christine Lincoln. So that's this coming Tuesday. So we hope to see you guys. You can find me at faymccray.com. My books are on Amazon. I'm on my handle is Hey Faye McCray on Instagram, and I'm at Faye Writes on Twitter and Facebook.
Fabulous. And last but certainly not least.
Okay, I'm at AnnBrackenAuthor.com, and my books are on Amazon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We had a lovely panel and a couple of wonderful poems read. You know we love when we can get to sneak in some poems being read.
Exactly. And I just want to say you now have me feeling for some coffee because you started off with coffee beans. So I'm not going to lie, I got a little distracted. I came back, though. With the bridges, I was back by bridges.
I was back. I was really thinking about that leftover coffee in my coffee pot. I'm wondering, I'm like, if I reheat it on the stove, will it still taste okay? I don't know. We're going to find out right after this.
That's what I say now. Anyway, I'm sorry. Back to professionalism.
James, would you like to ask? Absolutely. Find out everything your ladies are doing on www.andwethought.com. While you're there, take a moment, go to the ladies tab, go down to the middle and see the charities that we probably support. Yes, we know that times are hard and maybe you cannot donate money, but maybe you can donate things, as in, like, if you have 17 pairs of pants, but only, like, 12 fit you and you're trying to get rid of the other 5, maybe you want to, charity, donate it, or just even write in the email to say, I see your work and it's wonderful. Thank you. Please keep going. Everybody needs a little encouragement, and it really doesn't cost that much to do that. So, just remember, wisdom is all around you if
you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Winona
and Jade. Bye-bye.